Okay, on most of these, on a diesel engine like this, most of your stuff for the engine compartment is going to be over on this side. So you can pick up 4 things right off of this side before you even go over to the other side. So the easiest way is always start up at the top and work your way down, and then you don't miss anything. Of course, you're going to be looking for leaks on the side of the engine, around the turbo, looking for exhaust leaks. Checking your water level up here at the top. If it's got a sight glass, check the sight glass. If not, when it's cold, you can pull the cap, but if it's hot, don't. Come down to the alternator. Make sure the alternator is firmly fastened. All the wiring is tight on it. Belts can't have more than 3/4 of an inch of play. Okay, come on down to your water pump. Check the water pump around. Make sure the water pump's not leaking anywhere. Come on over, check your oil. And on this one, it's up here, your fill back here. And everything along the side of it. Take a look at it, make sure it's good. Fan blades are tight. There's no play in the clutch and the fan blades. Okay, and then you can go on around to the other side. Same thing over here. Go ahead and look at all the side of the engine. Look for any leaks or anything that may be there. Make sure all your hose clamps, everything is in good condition. All the wiring doesn't look like there's anything that's rubbing, fraying, or anything of that nature. Check your power steering. Check your air compressor. Look at your lines. Look at your governor. Because right here on the back of the governor is a good place that they'll leak, right there where that plug is, and they'll start leaking out of there. Come up to your power steering pump. Make sure there's no leaks around the power steering pump itself. Then you can go ahead and move right on to the steering. Check the steering shaft. See how much play you've got into it. Make sure the U-joints are all tight and no slop in that. Come down to the gearbox itself. Check the bolts. Make sure they're all in there. No leaks out of the power steering unit. Check your pitman arm, then check your drag link, your steering ring knuckle, down to the tie rod end, and then look at the tie rod going across. And what you're looking for there is each one of those ball sockets, that they are tight, and also that the castle-headed nut has got a cotter key through the castle-headed nut. Keep it from loosening up, and you can check just about all of them just by grabbing them and shaking it. Okay, then go to the front suspension. Check your shock absorber. Make sure there's no fluid running out of the shock absorber. Make sure all the bushings are in good shape. It's mounted solid and it's tight. Look at the front spring. Make sure there's no cracked leaves, no missing leaves. Look at the mounts, both front and rear. Make sure they're properly lubricated. And on this one here, it does have the shackles in the back, and it goes through the eye up in the front. So make sure you got the double bolts on the shackle back here. Okay, then you come on out here to the front wheel. Check the front wheel. You got to have 4/32 inches of tread depth in every major groove. So if you've got one that's wearing off on the inside because of alignment, that's where it would be checked, is in that. It's got to have 4/32 all the way across. Go down, check your sidewalls. Make sure the sidewalls are not bruised, cut, anything damaging the tire that could result. You can have a small slice in it as long as it doesn't go all the way into the cord. So as long as there's no cord showing, little cuts in the sidewall are okay. Look at the rim, make sure the tire is all the way out against the rim on the bead. Because you got this bead around here, and especially on the right-hand side where you're making turns. Because when you're making those turns, a lot of times you'll drag that trailer over a curb and it'll push the tire on the bead. Okay, check the rim. Make sure there's no cracks in it. Make sure there's no welds. And a place to look for cracks is right from the lugs up to the air holes right here, because that's where they will crack, and around the lug nuts. Check the lug nuts for tightness and make sure they're all tight. And a lot of times, if you do happen to have a loose one, you may see rust streaking up the wheel if you've been running through any rain or anything else. And that's mainly due because you got a steel stud with a steel nut on there, and as it's working, it'll rust out. Check your center hub seal. Even with the baby moons on there like this, if that hub seal's leaking, it will run grease down on the outside. It'll come out around that. Okay, then you go into the brake. Check the brake hose. Make sure that the hose is in good condition. Comes all the way around. Make sure there's no leaks. You can't hear anything on that. Check your chamber. Make sure the chamber is firmly mounted to the bracket right here. And there's no cracks, dents, leaks, or anything like that in the chamber itself. Okay, this truck has got the S-cam drum brakes. So right here is your slack adjuster, and it is an automatic, but make sure periodically that you pull on that, and there can't be more than 1 inch of free travel. Because even with the automatic, sometimes they'll won't adjust, or they adjust too much. so make sure you got those. Then look in at the brake drum, make sure there's no cracks in it, and that you got adequate lining. Also, when you look at the inside of the wheel, look for any grease running down the inside of the wheel, because you do have another grease seal in there. And if that one leaks, then it's going to be right down on your brake shoes. Okay? Okay, that finishes all the way back to here now. So now you're back to the cab. Make sure that the mirror is mounted firmly. Make sure the door opens and closes and latches properly. Make sure that the fuel tank, the steps on the tank, everything is secure. Check the fuel by taking the cap off, looking into it, so you don't trust the gauges. Okay, and then also make sure the cap is tight. Look down underneath it for any lines, crossover lines between the two tanks. Make sure they're secured. Also make sure there's no leaks out of the tank. Okay, then moving on back, if you've got your fire extinguisher and reflectors in here, go ahead and make sure that they're in there. Also make sure that all the doors are closed tight. Okay, like this one can be open from the inside, but make sure it is tight. Okay, then as you work your way back, underneath the tractor you have three things to check under there. You check the drive line, make sure that the universal joints are all in good condition, center carrier bearings in good condition, look at the rear seal on the back of the transmission, and check the seal on the rear ends itself. And then check your frame as you're walking back, looking at the frame, make sure there's no cracks, no welds, no missing bolts, rivets, or anything like that, and that the cross members across are in good condition. Check your exhaust system as you're coming back. I already checked it all the way down through. You can see it from the engine compartment. Looking wherever there's a fitting to make sure there's no black soot around that fitting. Then check your stack over there to make sure that the stack is tight, bolted up. It's not going to fall off going down the road. Okay, then as you're coming back into here, check your catwalks to make sure that the catwalks are in good condition. Check your splash guards, that they're firmly fastened in place. Check the lines that got worked on there. Make sure there's no leaks up here in the front. Come on back, check your glad hands back here on the trailer itself. And also, it's a good deal when you got them apart. Look at the gasket that's in there. There's a rubber gasket. Make sure that that gasket is tight right in here. Everything's up in place. It's not cracked, pulled, or anything else. And anytime you're hooking up, when you get two pieces of dry rubber, you put them together, they're going to crimp. If you just take a little bit of spit on your finger or anything like that and wet them first, then they'll slide together a lot easier and keeps you from getting a leak here. Okay, front of the trailer, make sure the front of the trailer looks good. Then go ahead and check these wheels just like you did up on the front. You're going to check the springs, the shocks, and this one does have airbags. So you're going to have your bellows, your bags, your canisters, your pots, whatever you want to call them. Check the air lines going to them, make sure they're not leaking. Make sure the shock absorber is fully fastened. And if it had the auxiliary spring with them, you check that auxiliary spring with it to make sure that's in good shape. Check your tires. On the rear, all you have to have is 2 30-seconds. Check the sidewalls, make sure the sidewalls are in good shape. Check the rims again. Check the lug nuts. Check your axle seal in there. And then with the tandem tires, one of the things you want to check is between the tires. Make sure there's nothing wedged in there. Because a lot of times you may pick up a 4x4, a rock, or something like that going down the road. And with that in between the tires, you can end up with tire failure or possible tire fire. So you want to make sure that's there.